Thank you for downloading the Following Films podcast. Today my guest is Pat Healy, the star of the film Cheap Thrills. I normally go on for a couple minutes describing the movie, but this was honestly one of the best conversations I've had since I started this podcast, and I just want to get right into it. So if you have never downloaded the show before, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review, and just enjoy the show. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Are you gonna have time to talk to Doug about the raise today?
I'm in trouble, man.
What's going on?
I don't have a job since like an hour ago. We got an eviction notice this morning. If I don't pay in a few days, we're gonna be on the street.
You know what you need? You need to get a little intoxicated with a buddy of yours.
All right, for just a little bit.
Hey, Craig, these guys want to buy on the next round, man.
I'm Colin. This is my wife, Violet. It's Violet's birthday today, so we thought we'd go out on the town, get a little crazy. Violet and I came up with this idea for an awesome night.
What do we have to do?
Whichever of you fellas does this shot first gets $50. Boom.
Wait, what?
Oh! Meanwhile, wait, what? I'll give you $200 whoever touches that stripper with a slap.
Hey, you the one who hit one of our girls?
No,
I swear to God.
$500 if you hit him first. You will never forget this night.
1, 2, 3.
All right. Even if you never see us again, you will never forget us. I think that's awesome.
Yeah! Give him a yeah!
This one is for us.
You gotta win it.
Okay.
$800. Whoever can get inside their house. This is breaking and entering.
Just come home.
What are we doing next, huh?
Cut your pinky off.
What?
Just have to do whatever we say.
I will knock you out.
Cool it! Let's rewind. Guys, all right, so we're cool.
We're cool.
Let's push play. $25,000. It's your pinky. You use it for, like, nothing.
I'll do it.
What about me? I don't make that much money.
21.
18.
$15,000.
Are you crazy, man?
I need that money for my family. Do it, Fitz.
1, 2, 3.
What's next?
$50,000. 3, 2, 1, go.
Let me tell you this, no matter how much money's in that box, I am not sucking his...
Hey, Pat, how are you?
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Doing really well. There's going to be another voice you'll hear on the line. That's Michael Dennison. He's my co-host.
Okay, are you Chris or Christopher?
I go by Chris.
Okay, great.
Hey, Pat, this is Michael on the other side of the conversation.
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm good, thanks. A little under the weather today, so I'm sorry if I sound a little congested, but...
Oh, did you want to reschedule, or are you going to be okay?
No, I'm fine. Yeah,
okay.
Good. I got on one of those airplanes that was like a walking, like flying hospital the other day.
How was it? Is that from, you met Joel Hodgson over the weekend? Is that?
Yeah, I was down in Cincinnati for Horror Hound weekend, so it was my first convention that I'd done, and it was fun. But I was situated next to Joel on one side, and the other side of me was my friend AJ Bowen, who's in the Sacramento, and You're Next.
Yeah.
House of the Devil, and then Kane Hodder, who played Jason in a bunch of the Friday the 13th movies. So there's an interesting crew of people. Right across from us was Linda Blair and T. Thomas Howell, Pony Boy.
So do you think you'll do the conventions again?
I think so. It was really fun, and it's actually quite lucrative. I was surprised. Just for your, signature on things and selling posters and DVDs and Blu-rays and things like that, And people are, the best thing is that people are, these aren't big movies that I've done, so that they have, they're cult films and they have rabid fan bases. So the people that are your fans, get to come right up to you and tell you how much they love it and how much it means to them, and that means everything to me, because that's, as much as I enjoy doing the work that I do, I want it to be reaching people. That's why I do it in the first place, to communicate these ideas and feelings. So, yeah, it's great.
And what's the one that people come up to you, because you have a huge body of work, what's the one that they come up to you about most often?
Well, in this context, so this was, strictly speaking, a horror show. It's mostly the Innkeepers. The Innkeepers, and now Cheap Thrills, I mean, hasn't been around as long, but that's very popular too.
Mm-hmm.
And Starry Eyes, I think those are the three sort of like horror films. But overall, you know, it's pretty crazy because I made it, 16 years ago, and you know, worked a couple days on it. But Magnolia is like a crazy thing that just keeps. And that was not even a movie that did well when it came out, but it's just a movie that people love and just want to talk about all the time. And Ghost World as well. That's very popular as well. And Ghost World is a little popular with this crew too because it was based on a comic book, so it has some crossover, and there's a, you know, an outsider aspect to it.
Has that been released on Blu-ray yet?
Ghost World, no, it hasn't. I don't know when they should be doing that soon, I hope.
Yeah, I thought, because it's one of those ones I haven't been able to find. I love that movie. And
I know, you're right. Maybe Criterion will do it or something.
God damn right, they should.
They've done From, so.
With like Magnolia, you kind of mentioned that the initial response was not as strong as it's been like over time. What's one of your films that surprised you as far as the reaction on initial release and maybe how that's changed?
It's all been like that. I mean, I made a joke recently that I said, you know, hire me if you want your movie to be popular 5 or 10 years from now, you know, because when I was younger, you know, when I first was kind of starting out in Hollywood, I did Magnolia and I did Ghost World, and you know, the Ghost World was a small budget movie, but it probably made its money back, but it wasn't like it was like a huge movie. And you know, Magnolia was certainly a financial disappointment, and it was critically, a lot of people don't remember, the reviews were very mixed. I mean, with the exception of Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood, you know, most of his movies are usually pretty polarizing, but that was a movie that just didn't, you know, connect with people. And then I would say even like a year later, people were coming up to me and talking about how it was like, you know, their favorite movie of all time. And people still do, you know, and people talk about how that's their favorite scene in the movie. And I just watched it again recently from, I don't know, it's been at least 10 years. And I'm amazed at how little I actually appear. I mean, it's mostly just you know, the scene is stretched out over a period of time, and it's mostly on her. Right. So it makes me feel good that people remember me from it, because I guess my presence is memorable, because my actual screen time is really not that much. Then like later on, like Assassination of Jesse James, that's another one that, you know, didn't do well. It got mixed reviews, and it did really badly business-wise, that people regularly talk to me about as being one of their favorite movies. It's certainly, you know, many cinematographers believe that that's, you know, Roger Deakins' finest hour, you know, that they've talked to me about that all the time. Some of the stuff that I've done on television, you know, I've done a lot of guest stars and things like that, will come back. People were bringing all kinds of stuff up to me this weekend, you know. There's always a person that has the DVD cases of your entire filmography, you know, every TV show you did and all this stuff. So I did some, you know, cult shows, like I did Angel, which is, you know, Joss Whedon's Buffy spinoff show, and I played this vampire motivational speaker. It's basically like Tony Robbins, but it's a vampire, and he's trying to get people to recruit more people for food, and you know, more people to join. Bring one for food and bring one for, you know, be the best vampire you can be, kind of thing. And that was really fun, and people talk about that a lot. And then I did one episode of Star Trek Enterprise, which was the last series that they did. And I'm a huge Star Trek, the original series fan. So I wanted to get on it because I knew they weren't going to be doing any more series. And at that time, there was no plans to make any more movies either, years before the J.J. Abrams movie happened. And the episode took place in a mirror universe where the original Enterprise was, where it was taking place. So they had rebuilt the set on the Paramount lot of the original bridge and everything. And I remember just walking in there and standing on that, just getting chills. You know, I had this crazy, you know, latex makeup head. I was playing this alien. Yeah. And I was like, I'm on Star Trek. Like, and I was still smoking at the time. I used to be a smoker, quit about almost 10 years ago, but I was trying to figure out how to smoke with these webbed hands that I had. I had like blue webbed hands.
Uh-huh.
And there was a guy that was working next door. He was like breaking down a set at the soundstage next door, and he's like, at first the question he asked me was hilarious. He goes, "Were you working on Star Trek?" I'm like, I'm sitting there like a blue alien. Like, said yes. He goes, "Well, you're part of history now." And I was like, it really like sunk in at that moment. And you know, Star Trek fans are no joke, man. Like, I regularly get. Now I did one scene. And I'm completely, you know, covered in makeup, so I'm totally unrecognizable. But several times a year I get sent, you know, trading cards or 8x10s or whatever to sign of my character, because there's people who collect autographs from every single person that has ever appeared in Star Trek. So I even got some of those this weekend. And then Compliance is the movie that the reaction to has surprised me the most in many different ways, and I could certainly speak to that if you want to.
Yeah, how so?
Well, when we made the movie, I mean, I don't want to completely speak for Craig, but we thought that our biggest problem was going to be that people wouldn't believe it, even though it was a true story. It was so outrageous that we thought that people would, not accept it as logical, and a lot of people didn't, a lot of people just don't buy it, the movie. And some of them have a sort of knee-jerk reaction to that. And some of them have a logical explanation, or a critique of it, or why it doesn't work for them or whatever. I think mostly the movie triggers people in a certain way that makes them defensive, and some people defend themselves intellectually against some, emotional feeling it would have. What I didn't expect at all, and what none of us expected, was this, at the initial premiere at Sundance, this outrage.
That's right. That
we were some sort of exploitation movie. And it was really actually quite frightening. The reaction was quite violent and sudden and unexpected. And we were sitting in the theater, and it was very clear that was, it's an uncomfortable movie, there's no question, but it was a really awful feeling sitting in there, and you could just feel it. And then it was just people screaming and yelling, and, not most people, like, of a crowd of 400 people, at least 3/4 of those people were on our side, but there were some people they really triggered, and I was shocked by that. And then I'm further not shocked, but pleasantly surprised at what a big hit that movie has been. It really was a success.
Oh, it's a great film. That's why.
Yeah, it's a great film, and it's the last movie I would have thought would attract an audience, but it really did, and it has continued to, attract an audience, and it did very well for all the people that sold it and put it out there, and for those of us that made it, and that was really surprising to me, but in a good way, because I think that it has a good message, and it's something that people need to hear and know about themselves, and what people need to know about something that actually happened, and be vigilant about. We find that the people who say, well, I would never do that, these people are so stupid, are the people that are more susceptible to it. I think if you say to yourself, this is a kind of perfect storm of events. It's not everything at once. It's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And if you are vigilant about it, if you're honest with yourself and you say, look, I could fall victim to something like this, then it's much less likely to happen for you, than it would be if you just deny that, if you deny that part of yourself. That's not to say you're bad or you're evil or anything, but we all are vulnerable to manipulations, and if we are on the lookout for them, and we're not saying, oh, that could never happen, I would never do that, I'm morally upright, well, you don't know what's happening to you. It's right. It's the quicksand. I use this metaphor far too often, but I love it. It's the Simpsons episode where Homer is in the quicksand, and he says, I'm going to pull my feet out with my hands. And then he says, and now I will pull my hand out with my face. It's like it makes sense to you in the moment. You're just slowly thinking, and it's just like, well, what am I going to do? I got to do this, and then all of a sudden there you are, and you're completely immersed in it. So, I mean, that one I think has been the most, positively fascinating, success story. I would say that on the flip side of that, Great World of Sound, which was the first movie that we made together, that I starred in and Craig directed and co-wrote, was a very successful film at Sundance and didn't do well. And it's sort of like a movie that people are starting to come around and discover now that they've seen Compliance, and now that Craig has a new movie that's coming out and stuff. Mm-hmm. But, that one's a little bit of a heartbreaker on one hand, because I wish more people had seen it. But on the other hand, every single lead role that I have been offered after that is because of that movie. Ty West was a fan of that movie. Evan Katz is a fan of that movie. Obviously, Craig hired me again. So, these things pay dividends long after. It's just like I'm talking about Magnolia. It's like I also still get checks for all of these things that I did forever ago. So they literally pay dividends. But, Great World of Sound, we filmed in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2005, and here we are almost 10 years later. It'll be 10 years in May. And it's still getting me work. So, wow. It's a really important lesson. You guys actually caught me on a good day where, like, something that because I work as a writer too, and, I've been through some tough times recently financially, and something that I had been working on for a long time, in a relationship that I had developed and cultivated with somebody, just paid off in a major way for me. And we're talking about 8 or 9 years of work.
Oh my God.
That finally just paid off, and it's important to hang in there, because it really, like, if this is what you want to do, like, you just got to, like, stick with it, and it always takes longer than you think it's going to. But it's like, I can't even talk about what it is yet, but it's like,
sure.
It's like, was just something just fell out of the sky for me. But then I go, like, but really this was like 8 or 9 years of really hard work that finally, like, resulted in something for me. And all of this stuff, I've been working professionally for 21 years now, and I've been in SAG for 20 years, and it just takes time, and everybody has their own path. And I think the early success stories, I mean, even most of the overnight success stories are not really overnight success stories, but even the ones that are, the people that get successful very young, they are news stories, and about them because they're such anomalies. It's so unusual for it to happen that way, Whereas you look at, like, a Bryan Cranston, who certainly worked, but, he did this TV show for, I don't know, a decade that was very popular but didn't do anything for his acting career. And then he does a show that probably had a quarter of the audience of that show, and he's a movie star. So, and he's in his 50s.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy, but when it's rewarding, it's rewarding. The highs are highs and lows are low, and some of us are attracted to that gambler's mentality. But I really, like, as I get older here, I really just am looking for stability in my life. Sure. Because it's not as easy to talk about cheap thrills. When we shot it, I was in a good place personally, so it's easier to fucking sorry, can I say the
yeah, whatever.
It's easier to allow myself to go to those dark places when I'm at a good place and I have a strong foundation and my feet are planted, because I know I can reel myself back from doing that every day and go back to my life. It's much harder to do when your actual life is chaotic and you don't know where the next, check is coming from, and, all that stuff. It just makes it harder. I mean, you can always use that, but it can be very chaotic and hectic, and it's much easier to do from a place of stability. Then you can go freaking nuts, like you can go just like anything else. You have to, they say, you have to know the rules in order to break them. Well, you also have to have stability in order to, let yourself go. And what I feel like, I do with acting is, allow myself to be completely vulnerable and really put myself out there and really commit to something. And sometimes with, some of these darker films, that means, putting myself in a place that's not, entirely safe. But I like that aspect to it, as long as I know that personally I'm safe. Obviously that I'm physically safe on set, and mentally and emotionally I'm safe, and I'm not, going too deep. I mean, where I can't come back from it. That's something I've just learned from doing it for a long time and with a lot of practice. I have an acting teacher who says, know how deep the pool is before you dive in. You don't want to hurt yourself. Sometimes you're doing a guest star in a TV show. You don't need to. I'll still put as much hard work into any single thing I do, but sometimes when you're doing a guest spot on, CSI Piscataway, New Jersey, you don't want to, go too deep, and blow people's minds. But, certainly, with Cheap Thrills, the opportunity is there to do just that, and not only that, but to start from A and go to Triple Z in, 85 minutes.
Yeah. Get
to basically do everything you've ever wanted to do in your entire career in one movie. It's a pretty remarkable opportunity for me, and I love the movie.
I absolutely love the film, and that's why I reached out to you. It gets really dark, as you were saying.
Yeah.
And specifically, your character, Craig, makes the darker turn and does, in sort of my opinion, the more loathsome things even before the final act. It seems like he has a much larger journey that he takes in the film. And
yes.
Do you think the audience should still be pulling for him in that last frame?
Well, I like to think that I would encourage anyone to feel however they want about the character. I could speak from my point of view and what I think maybe is Evan's point of view, which is that I think a lot about Taxi Driver, and I think a lot about there's an interview somewhere with Scorsese where he talks about how Taxi Driver, what he tried to attempt was a guy he's living his life story, but he's also watching himself do it. So there's actually a shot at the beginning of Taxi Driver where he's in the cab depot, and the camera swings around from his POV, and when it swings back around, you see him. So it's like he's looking at himself.
Yeah.
And the story is sort of romanticized in some ways because it's through his point of view. Certainly the ending where Sybil Shepherd gets in the car, and it's very gauzy sort of romantic lighting and music and everything, and it's his story, and we're seeing the truth of it, but we're also seeing his point of view of who he thinks he is, which is a hero, And the last shot of Cheap Thrills is like Craig's, masterpiece. His drawing of himself, of how he sees himself, which is this low angle, and it's strong, and he's protecting his kid, and he's, been beaten, but he's not been, he's bloody but unbowed, and he's, standing tall. But you could also look at it and just be completely flabbergasted and have the look of, that Amanda Fuller who plays my wife's face, just absolute horror. I think it's both, and you asked about the journey of the character, and I came to a realization that we shot pretty much in sequence, but we did shoot all the stuff with where I'm at home, which is the beginning and the end of the movie. And I guess we should say spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, don't listen to this. But, the beginning and the end of the movie, we shot at the beginning. So I saw how I looked at the beginning, and I saw how I looked at the end. And that, not only told me that I knew I had to get from here to there in this amount of time, but I had this thought. Sometimes you just get an image in your mind, and it can be like a talisman or something that is a guidepost to a reminder of who your character is that you can always go back to. Like, for example, again, in Taxi Driver, De Niro talked about Travis Bickle being a crab. So he had this idea of a crab in his mind, and it wasn't like he walked around like a crab or anything like that, but the idea was in his mind, and there are certain things that he does unconsciously, I think, that for whatever reason he thought that was important. And with Cheap Thrills, it was, I had this idea, he already looks that way on the inside. By the end of the movie, he looks the way he does on the inside, outside as he does on the inside. So we have this article that you see on the wall of my apartment at the beginning, because I'm a failed writer, but I did have one published article.
Right.
And Evan actually let me write that article. It's a short story. And I can't remember exactly what the words were, but it is a short story about someone being out of touch with their own feelings and someone, not really knowing themselves. And nobody, to me, just turns one day like that. You have to be that person. We all know that. This, may run contrary to what I was saying about compliance, but yes, we all have that in us, but we don't all have it in us to murder someone.
Right.
I don't believe, I'm not talking about self-defense or anything like that. I'm just talking about cold-blooded murder, which is, in my opinion, what happens in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially of a quote-unquote friend. And yes, we can go through all of the things that I think were very effective about the relationship, and it's not like I'm not pushed and all that stuff, but that's a big, step to take. And so that has to be there. And I think that he doesn't really know himself. I think that it's all a mask. I think the glasses and the nerdy affect and all this stuff, are really, it's not like he's planning to murder someone. He doesn't know. But this night, in this perfect storm of events, finally bring out who he really is. And that was something that I learned on the second day of shooting by looking at myself with that amazing prosthetic makeup that Hugo Villaseñor did, that, I'm never going to play somebody as a bad guy. I don't think in terms of that.
Sure.
And I think, again, to talk about Taxi Driver, we run into a big problem these days in movies, and if you're a writer and you developing scripts with this, in the studio system or with production companies, of this idea of likability. And likability has nothing to do with anything. No, you don't have to like a person. You have to understand them. And in Taxi Driver, the first 15 minutes of the movie, we're just with this guy. We're really with him. Mm-hmm. So by the time he's doing all this stuff, it doesn't matter whether we like him or not, but we understand him. And right. That's really all I'm interested in. And people have asked me to play a lot of marginal characters, and I suppose at many times in my life since I was a kid, I have felt, marginalized in some ways, or like an outsider, or, I even, I do suffer from depression and anxiety. I do have issues, that I cope with much better than now that I'm, an adult. But that I just want people to understand. That's all I've ever wanted as a person and as an artist. I just want you to understand. I don't care if you like me. I don't care as a person. I would like you to like me. I think I'm a good guy, but, I know everyone's not going to. And I think that it wasn't planned, but I think that my career has begun to follow this arc of, well, if people are going to ask me to play these characters, then I want them to understand why, they are the way they are. They don't have to like me, but I find a huge difference between liking something and finding it interesting. And interesting is what keeps me glued to the screen,
Absolutely.
Or anything, it's complex humanity. And, that character in Compliance is reprehensible to me. It was difficult to play because I did not enjoy living in those feelings. And I have turned things down because I don't want to expose myself to understanding that. And I don't feel like I want to, for example, somebody offered me a part of a child molester, and I said no, because I don't believe that I don't want to play that, and I don't want to humanize that. I just don't. Yeah. I'm fine with other people if they want to do it. I'm actually not fine with it. I don't know why people are still making things about child molesters, but I don't think there should be an attempt to humanize, something. I do understand and I empathize because there is a psychology behind it, and there's a it's not just something that somebody likes to do, but it's not something that I want to be a party to. And with compliance, I thought it was important to show that guy's humanity because you want to know why that happened. And for me, that, in a similar experience to what happened at the beginning of Cheap Thrills, we were shooting with 2 cameras on one soundstage, and the restaurant, the office of the manager was upstairs, and my lair was downstairs. And we're actually on the phone with each other, and the camera's on each of us all the time.
Oh, really?
So the scenes are really happening, and it certainly helps for the performance. You're actually acting with all the people. So I'm acting with Ann and Dreama and everybody up there. But what happened was on the first day the phone broke, and I had to go up because we didn't have a lot of time. It was a short shoot, low-budget shoot, and sit in there and say that stuff to their face. And it made me sick to my stomach. And again, it was like a cool discovery, as awful as it felt to feel that way, that this was a guy who thought he was being a prankster. He was being a jerky boy. And Craig always said, the stakes should be very low. The worst thing that could happen is they're going to hang up on you. He's not taking into consideration any of the consequences of his actions because he's not watching it. He's the kind of person that could only do what he does from the safety behind a telephone, and it's the second he's exposed to it, it's, he would be sickened by it. And that just really informed everything I did because I know, and I've been unfortunately exposed to it, and as many of us have, the Twitter trolls and the IMDb message board trolls and all the trolls that come out and say stuff to you behind the veil of a fake name and no picture, that it's that kind of person,
Sure.
And they really kind of if you ever find out who they are, or, there's been a couple famous people who have tracked those people down to their house, they shrink, and they shrink and they apologize. They're they feel some sense of power behind that, shield of anonymity and technology. And, while I think all of this technology is ultimately good for us, it has its demons. And,
of course.
Yeah. So I could relate to that, even though I didn't like the person. They say, there have been so many actors and famous teachers who've said, you have to like the person that you're playing. And it's I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I don't like to see an actor. There are certain actors that I see that I feel are judging the character, and they sort of they feel they're sort of distancing themselves from the character and showing hi, I'm blankety blank playing this bad guy, and sort of commenting on it,
Yeah.
And I find that very sort of it removes me from it. But at the same time, lots of people are self-hating, and they don't need to be conscious of that, and they probably aren't. But I certainly saw this character in Compliance as self-hating, and I'm no stranger to self-loathing at times in my life either. So I got that. So you don't have to like them because they don't like themselves,
Right. And do you think that sort of parallels your character in Cheap Thrills, and in a way also Ethan Embry's character, in that these are all people that aren't being honest and forthright with themselves, and that they're, through this process, coming to terms with who they are. I guess in Compliance, you were sort of coming to terms with it when you just actually said those words, looking at them, and you felt the sort of reaction of that. Do you think that also Ethan Embry's character he's not as tough as he thinks he is? He just has this harder job, and that maybe when he's put down to that moment when it would be in his best interest possibly to murder, he walks away from it and chooses friendship over it.
Absolutely. I've said it before, I'll say it again. My absolute favorite moment in the movie is that moment where he's against the bar and he realizes he can't do it, and he looks at them and Ethan's pupils actually dilate. I don't know how he does that. He just sort of snaps out of this haze that he's been in all night, this coke and alcohol-fueled haze and, adrenaline and competition and all that stuff, which I think is, people talk about, it's about, certainly a commentary on, while it's not polemic or overt, it's certainly a comment on our current, economic state and where we are as a country and as people. But it's just as much about, male competition and feeling small and that's what road rage is. It's people who, I can't believe that person didn't even see me and they just cut me off, like I feel insignificant. And he is the one true, in the end, the quote unquote scumbag is the one true moral character in the movie. Yeah. Maybe my wife, but I mean, among the quartet, right? He's really the only one who makes a decision that is not in his own best interest in order to protect somebody. And he finds his humanity just in a completely different way than I do, We both realize who we are.
When do you think that the character of Craig made the decision to go the distance, really, that he would go as far as he needed to for the money?
I think it's incremental. I think there's a moment shortly after I wake up from my coma after being punched out where my wife calls and I have a moment of, I should go home. But I sort of think about it and I see that they're paying these money for these dares and I see how far I can take it. And then, once you've reduced yourself to haggling down, cutting off parts of your body, you've completely, not just physically, but, spiritually devalued yourself. You're not even thinking about yourself as a person anymore. And then when you add to that the humiliation that he must have felt his whole life at being picked on, which is hinted at in the movie several times. And there it is. And there's finally a gun in his hand, and he feels justified. He finally feels justified in doing that. It's being pummeled. I can understand, certainly, even recently, just feeling pummeled, not physically, but just by life, just feeling beaten down. And you start to, see how people make decisions like, well, if that cash drawer is open in the 7-Eleven, I mean, this wallet's on the street, and it's got cash in it, or again, murder is a big jump for me. It's not something I would ever do. And people have asked me like how far I would go, and I guess I probably would chop off my finger. I don't think I'd do it for less than, $150,000, but I guess I could see that, I think after that, I guess the dog eating comes after that, but while not pleasant, is certainly not as big a deal to me as mutilating oneself, although every dog lover who sees this movie would disagree with me. But, I think it's just a gradual thing. It's like in life, we can't pinpoint those moments. There's sort of the myth that is perpetuated by, as someone who goes to therapy myself, like movies like Good Will Hunting and Ordinary People, which are very good movies, but there's always an aha moment where the therapist discovers and the guy, what the magic key is. And there's a release. And, I wish life worked that way. It doesn't, and even therapy it's a subtle change over time. There aren't aha moments, and in life, I think that, is is analogous to life. We suddenly one day, this big break that I got yesterday wasn't something that fell out of the sky. It's something that, I've been working on for 8 or 9 years, and it's had its ups and downs, and it paid off. And I think that we change gradually. It's like physically, it's why we look in the mirror now and we're like, we still expect to see that 22 or 23-year-old, and we're, I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm in my early 40s. Yeah. And it's weird, you know, and you talk to people like I talked to my dad, you know, who's 70, and he's like, I'm still 23, and it's sometimes shocking, you know, like it's just this thing that happens, you know, and, you know, I'm not going to say that, you know, murder is just something that happens. That's not what I mean, but yeah, I thought that the script was so great, and I thought the way that we worked on it and the way that Evan directed it was so great, because shooting that part of the movie in sequence, we could incrementally pinpoint every single little thing, and I could pinpoint each level of pain that I went through and all the levels of intoxication and through the stacking up of humiliations. And, you know, there's only so much that a person who already is of a fragile, you know, eggshell mind is going to take, you know, in that pressure cooker situation. And if he's being told he can get away with it, well, you know, does he regret it? I mean, you know, I don't like to talk about movies after they're over. You know, we're not still up there on the screen running around, but unless we do a sequel. But, you know, like, you know, I don't know. It's not ultimately important. Like, you know, I also like the fact that the movie could have easily been a Hangover or Very Bad Things type movie. And, you know, I like those movies, but, you know, at the Hangover, they all get to go home and everything's fine. Mm-hmm. In fact, they do it 3 times and everything's fine, you know? And this movie is not that. This movie is like, there's going to be a lot to reckon with for this guy. Well, you know, even if he gets away with the murder, it's like his family, his kids, his medical condition. I mean, like, and what he's going to have to live with now. Is he going to, like, then now be that guy and be a, you know, become an underground cage fighter? Or is he going to try and go back to let his face, you know, the swelling in his face go down and try back? He can't go back to being that person anymore, you know? But, you know, in an oddly perverse way, it's been really important to me in my life and my work to be my true self. And I think my life has gotten better and my work has gotten better because through therapy and just growing up and learning, you know, I've gotten closer and closer to knowing myself and who I really am. And I find people that aren't in touch with themselves really sad. And I think that, you know, look, if you're a murderous asshole, you should be that. Like, I mean, it's not safe for other people. I don't want people to get murdered, but not being true to yourself. Like, you shouldn't be a murderer. You should go get help, you know? But you should definitely be in touch with your feelings. You shouldn't be stuffing all this stuff down because this stuff, that's why things like that happen. You know, people have so much hate and self-hate inside themselves, and they go out and they do horrible things, or they hate gay marriage, you know, because they, you know, probably can't handle, you know, their own feelings about something, or they, you know, they hate all kinds of things that really shouldn't bother them, but do because they're not comfortable with themselves. And I think it's really important to be in touch with who you are, whoever that is, and embrace that, you know.
Do you think that's a societal problem that we have, where somebody that has that impulse, that murderous impulse, or even a non-acting child molester, where it's so demonized to the point that they haven't acted on that impulse, but they can't even admit it to anyone to try to get that help, to try to seek that out?
I wouldn't want to generalize, but I you know, I've had a feeling, and I don't know, but I mean, I have a feeling, and it's really only conjecture based on, you know, what I've read and what I know, you know, that I don't think child molesters join the priesthood. I think making someone not be able to act on their sexual impulses distorts the brain.
Yeah.
And, you know, you get awful thoughts because it's a primal human physical biological need. And you just go, your mind rationalizes, you know. I'm sure that it's different for everybody. And believe me, I'm not defending it, because I think it's
no, I'm not taking
probably the most awful thing you can do. But I think that's where a lot of stuff comes from. I think people repress, and then they you know, it's like someone who was abused, you know, who beats their kids or their wife, you know, when what they really want to do is talk about their feelings or hurt themselves, you know. You lash out because we feel angry and we feel sad and we feel broken inside, and we're not dealing with it. We're not coping about it. We're not talking about it. We're not in a society that encourages talking about it. I mean, for some reason, there still is a stigma about going to therapy and taking medication. Mm-hmm. We're also in a society where the talking about it that is on display is on these circus talk shows that are there to put people on display as things to be, and reality shows as things to be mocked and things to be people to make yourself feel better about yourself because you're better than them. It's not healthy. It's a really unhealthy way that we have portrayed, expressing your feelings, which is either like don't say anything at all or go and make an ass of yourself on TV. Right. Now that's like extreme and maybe a generalization, but I definitely see a correlation between the two. And there's certainly some commentary on the, reality television in Cheap Thrills too, which is people debasing themselves for money. And also this idea of the new celebrity, which is, it doesn't matter what kind of attention you get, even if it's negative attention, it's just attention, And, for some people being on TMZ is the same thing as winning an Academy Award,
Oh, God.
That's just where we are right now. It's a value of being known. That's what having lots of Twitter followers. And look, I'm on all this stuff. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, all that stuff. I see a lot of good out of it. But a lot of people, build a false sense of self and self-worth off these, things that aren't real. And, they're not sort of getting in touch with their feelings or their interpersonal relationships with people around them. And it has become really, people have become sort of, again, not to generalize, but seems to me people are more disconnected from each other because of the technology and the phones. And, we don't even talk to each other anymore. We text, I do it too. We text, we don't even see the people walking by us on the street. And something's wrong, we're in a weird place where politicians are getting away with horrible things and nobody seems to be saying much about it. And, we're all complaining, and so many people I know are broke and, losing jobs. And it makes sense to me that a person eventually a person like Craig in Cheap Thrills is gonna exist, and it's gonna snap, because it's just, what else is he gonna do in that situation? And even if you look at the movie as a total allegory for the way things are right now, this isn't new. People have talked about it. There are two very rich people who pit two very poor people against each other.
Right.
Well, so we don't attack them. We attack each other.
Well, even the story itself seems like it's rooted in the man from the South.
Yeah.
I assumed that was the case. Was that where the starting off point was for?
I really don't know. And I hadn't thought about it much because I don't know why I didn't think about it. It wasn't really something that came up until after the movie people were seeing the movie. Trent Haga, who wrote the original draft of the script, which was called Money for Something, which is, pretty...
It's a great title, too, though.
Good title, yeah. I'll use that for another one, I'm sure. But I think it's pretty different from the script that David and Evan eventually rewrote. I think the basic structure was there and all that. So and that's a good question for him, probably, because I really don't know. I wasn't thinking about it much more than the sort of the finger thing, Right. And I actually haven't seen it in years. I remember I saw the
4 Rooms?
The 4 Rooms segment when it came out, but that was 20 years ago or something. So I haven't seen it since. But I don't really know. I mean, I can't even really tell you what that's about. I don't remember. And it's been hard for me to find because they have the Hitchcock episodes, but they only have certain seasons on Netflix and stuff, and they don't have the season that's on, so I haven't seen it in years.
Well, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
I saw something where you had kind of limited edition shirts for the film with your image on it. Are those still available for people right now?
Yeah, they are kind of starting to wrap that up. I last week was going to be the last week, and then I had a demand for a bunch more, so we're selling some more. If you go on either my Facebook page or Tumblr or Twitter, it'll take you to all the information. It's basically a PayPal address, which is cheapthrillstees@gmail.com. And if you drop $30 in there or $50 international, and you list your size and your style, because there's V-necks and crew necks, this artist named Stuart Walker, he made a stencil of my face from the end of the movie, and then he hand paints it with the stencil, and he does a different sort of blood design for every shirt, so each one is unique.
Oh,
and
wow.
then I have sort of not ones that Stu did, but the same design, but they were mass-produced that I have that my brother made for me, because my brother works for an apparel company. And I'm sort of taking those around to some of these festivals and things I'm going to. If people want to buy those, they're I'll take whatever you want to give me for them. But I like it because it's. I love the movie, the end of the movie. I mean, I love the whole movie, but I love the end of the movie. And for me right now, it's really been symbolic in that way that Rocky is. I've really taken my knocks, but I'm still standing. And so I personally like that symbol. When Stu made that shirt, I was like, that's a really great metaphor for me, and I think people relate to that, the spirit of that, and certainly not in the sort of nefarious way it's portrayed in the movie, but if you look at it objectively, to think about it that way, that, we all take our knocks, but if we hang in there, we could be still standing tall with a giant bag of money at the end of it. And hopefully we haven't had to do too many horrible things to get it.
Well, and I forgot about this. Have you shot your segment of Tales of Halloween yet?
Yeah, I did that around Christmas time.
And which one are you in for it?
I mean the one that Neil Marshall directed.
Fuck, I love The Descent.
Yeah, me too. I really wanted to work with Neil. I love Centurion, and I love the Game of Thrones and that he does and stuff. And he's a great guy, and he asked me to do it, and I said yes right away. So yeah, I just looked at a little bit of it because we did some ADR for it, but I think they're aiming to have that out in the fall.
And how many segments are there for that?
I don't know. I want to say maybe 5, 6, perhaps.
Okay. There's
quite a few directors, so I'm not quite sure how they have it all laid out. And there's some people that have done ones that are shorter than others. But, it's Darren Bousman and Adam Green did one. And
Soleil did one, right? Soleil, however you pronounce it.
Oh yeah. What's that guy's name? Is it John Solid? Paul Solid. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Solid, and I think maybe Mike Mendez. I know Mike produced it. I don't know if Mike directed one. But I think it's like I just saw Mike and Neil when I did the ADR. It's like a 90-minute movie. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you like horror anthology then?
I do. I grew up with Creepshow and Twilight Zone the movie and Tales from the Dark Side and the Stephen King one, Katz Eye, all that stuff. Like when I was, a kid, I'm into it. So it was cool to do. It was great to work with Neil.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
You're more than generous with your time. So thank you. I'll have this up tomorrow probably. So
cool.
This out right away, and I'll send a link to you as soon as I have it up. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it up on all my pages and everything.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Great talking to you.
You too, man.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.